we go. What a game. You know, when you find out that Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton aren't playing, that's a lot of defense and a lot of offense that's missing, but the Raptors went marathon to marathon against the Bucks. Some key differences between these two teams, of course. One grasping on for dear life to a season that hasn't gone as planned, the other possibly planning for a second championship. Championship teams have championship DNA. They play a different brand of basketball. I liked how the Bucks played tonight. I can't say I liked how the Raptors played tonight. Let's take a look at some of these stats because they are, if you're worried about 51% from the field that the Raptors have been surrendering almost on a nightly basis, with the exception of last night, just take a look at these team stats. It's quite staggering. The Raptors attempt 15 more shots than the Milwaukee Bucks, shoot 8% worse from the field, give up 48.7% from the three-point line. A lot of that was guys shooting unbelievably hot, but guys are going to shoot hot when you leave them wide open, and the Raptors absolutely shot themselves in the foot, missed 10 free throws. They out-rebound their opponent. They take 15 more shots. How do you lose this game? Well, you know, when the Raptors are going well, those assists tend to trend in that 30 direction. And when things are not going well, they end up exactly what they did tonight, 20, right? Now, there was a stretch, I believe in the second quarter, where Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, that lineup, it was really gelling. There was something good happening offensively. Precious Achiuwa, wow. Like just Gary Trent Jr., that lineup was incredible. Just really pushing it down the Bucks' necks. I tweeted several times during this game in the first half that Fred VanVleet is playing a very good game. And someone messaged me and said, careful, do you remember what you said about ball dominant Fred games? I was like, right, I remember that. Last night notwithstanding, typically when Fred aggressively hunts his shot, the Raptors tend to lose. It's a pattern that I've noticed. It's not backed up by the data, by the way. It's a feeling. Maybe I'm biased. I don't know. Because he tends to score more in wins than losses. But he shoots like 10% better in wins. Takes a lot of the same shots. But tonight, it was probably overkill, right? One thing I've noticed about Fred VanVleet, there's a lot of mano-a-mano thing going on, right? Fred versus Drew, the battle of the All-Stars. It's not quite a battle, guys. It's not quite a battle. One of these players is decidedly better than the other, in my opinion. My humble opinion. I don't think it's that close. That withstanding, I think Fred VanVleet, offensively, I don't like the playmaking, or there was a particular play where Scottie had the ball and he was trying to get OG in the post, and Fred's behind him trying to get the ball from him, and Scottie just looked him off because I think he'd had a couple of bad possessions in a row. It's incredible to me how much ball dominance and isolation scoring and hero ball has been weeded out of the game. We have data to prove this play style does not work. And no matter how much data is present, and I know the Raptors have seen it, it does not stop them from occasionally, and sometimes way too often, going right back to playing that way. Whether it be Siakam, whether it be Trent, whether it be whoever, Boucher, Precious. I think we've had a couple of Scottie games which were like that too. So how do I grade Fred VanVleet's 39-point performance where he shot above 50% from the field? A solid C+. The defense was abysmal. It wasn't just Fred. It was Pascal. It was Gary Trent. There were so many gaps. It was so leaky. The Bucks offense just spread them out. Brook Lopez popping up at the corner, at the top, just shredding this defense. Jrue Holiday getting wherever he wants. I mean, we just made Jrue Holiday look like Michael Jordan. He's good. He's not this good. And then at the end of the game, game's sort of out of hand at that point. Fred VanVleet goes up for that layup, just chucks it up under the basket. Next play down, just races up, tries it again, gets blocked by Drew Holiday. And I said, man, if that isn't the most quintessential Fred VanVleet thing ever. We will talk about much more than just Fred VanVleet today. There was a lot of good and bad for the Raptors tonight. OG Anunoby really struggling. Defensively, though, he was pretty dialed in. This type of defense doesn't look good when only two guys are dialed in. Everybody looks stupid when only two guys are dialed in. I'm telling you. It's just the fact. So a sort of mixed performance from OG. It's really hard to get your rhythm when you're constantly being looked off, where you're open and they don't find you. Scottie, another mixed performance. I loved his defense. I loved his energy. I liked his playmaking in the spots where he was the lead guard, lead initiator. I liked it. I liked it a lot. The shot selection, not really. There was that one play where I think it was the end of the third quarter or the end of the second quarter, probably the third quarter, where there was like, I want to say about 3 to 4 seconds left on the clock, and he just hoists a total Hail Mary. That's a total brain fart. Like, he had time. And so not seeing clock in that situation is pretty inexcusable. I didn't like that from him. Overall, kind of a mixed performance from Scottie Barnes. It's hard to gauge this one. I think there were advantages. Brook Lopez presents so many problems. I think something that Scottie Barnes is going to have to realize, especially in the context of going forward as the Raptors aspire to win a little bit more, is that defenders, like really good defenders, you can't do the same thing over and over to them. They will scheme you out. He abused Brook Lopez in the last time these two teams met in a Raptors loss in the fourth quarter. I think he scored, was it 15 or 19 points in fourth quarter and overtime against the Bucks. That was an intense performance. Now he going back to the same thing. He got blocked like 2 or 3 times right at the rim. Brook Lopez is a really smart guy. Gary Trent Jr., I liked what I saw from him offensively. Thought a lot of those shots were in rhythm. He was making his shots, a lot of catch and shoot stuff. Last year there wasn't a great catch and shoot package in his game. A lot of the shots were just dribble, but today it just played within the rhythm of the offense. I liked it. Pascal Siakam, I would have liked to see him be a lot more assertive. He got really assertive getting to the line. But again, when Fred VanVleet kind of came into the game, he just gave it back to him. And he's just like, okay, well, Freddie, this seems like your game. Precious Achiuwa. It would be weird to call him my player of the game, but he's pretty close. Like, I just really liked how he attacked gaps, how he hit his shots. Like, he's slowly rounding into form. And I made a video like in the offseason saying he was the X factor for this team, and I pretty much stick by that. He's a big swing variable for that bench, and yeah, it was just hard. Juancho, not a great run from him tonight. Scottie found him wide open for that three. He passes it up. Scottie was just like, what the hell are you doing? That was a wide open three. That's why you're on the court. You got to take your shots. When you don't take shots that the offense generates for you and you start passing them up and you get cute, then you disrupt the entire offensive rhythm. Who else am I missing here? Let's talk about that fight for a second, and we will get to Larry, who is calling in, which is awesome. And to those who want to call in, you can definitely call in. The link is in the description. Let's see if I can post it here. Yep, I posted it in the comments right there for you. Fight is complicated, right? The Raptors announcers consistently showed Brook Lopez sort of being the agitator. I think Gary Trent sort of initiated it with that push. Brook Lopez obviously took it a step further. Kind of a heads up play by OG Anunoby to sort of bait Brook into that second foul. Somebody messaged me, FA actually messaged me on Instagram saying, Brook Lopez is out. We're gonna, oh my God, we're gonna win this game. And if you haven't gathered, there's a large segment of the Raptors fan base that is actively rooting for losses at this point because of Tankathon. And I was like, you have little faith, man. The way they're guarding, they couldn't beat anybody right now. And you know what? It shows up. Grayson Allen, Joe Ingles, this is who you're losing to. The Raptors have lost their defensive identity. It's really weird to me, right? Prior to the game, we did an offensive breakdown of Scottie Barnes's thing. If after this chat you guys have some time, definitely go check it out. Leo and I from Basketball Zone, we broke down Scottie's analytics profile, how he's turned around his season. This wasn't a great Scottie game, but I liked how he did a lot of those intangible things. There was a couple of block or two blocks. There was steals. He got his hands on everything. He was trying to initiate. He was just trying to be whatever his team needed him to be tonight. Screen setting, screen assists. This was a very Draymond-esque performance from him. I hate to pile on to that Draymond stuff, but some nights he just settles into that Draymond role. I would have liked to see him initiate more of the offense. I don't care if Fred VanVleet takes 50 shots. I just don't like Fred VanVleet being the lead decision maker for your offense for as much as he was tonight. Um, to get back to that fight, when Brook Lopez went out, like, that's just, I mean, this is a very depleted team. It's it's a very top heavy team. You're talking Giannis freaking Antetokounmpo. He's worth four guys, right? Like he is worth a starting lineup by himself. In fact, in some nights he is a starting lineup. He's like one of the highest usage players. Someone saying you're a hater if you shitting on Fred tonight. Honestly, man, like you just don't understand basketball. That's just my opinion. And you know what? You have a different opinion. Create your own freaking YouTube channel. Like I get sort of frustrated when people glamour over the box score way too much, right? It's like this guy had 50 points. Well, if you run every action, every screen, you run pistol action for them, you run double staggered screens for them to come off, and they take 27 shots. 39 points on 27 shots is an efficient shooting night. But it's all the other stuff. It's like if you watch that breakdown that Leo and I did, you watch how Scottie's getting his teammates in rhythm. When the ball doesn't find guys for a long time, you take shots out of rhythm, you become A, highly predictable. B, all your teammates sort of fall out of rhythm. Siakam was really good tonight, like in terms of efficiency. Like he could have been so much more assertive. It's just when one guy sort of just gets ahead of steam and he's one of your decision makers, you kind of trust it. And I think that it's really interesting tonight to really, for those of you who want to watch this game back, go and really look at how Drew Holiday played and look at how Fred VanVleet played. Drew Holiday is not a prototypical point guard. He's very much a point guard. Don't get me wrong, but he's not Jason Kidd. Like he's defense first. He can sometimes be a secondary initiator. He plays off the ball a lot. He's not a pound classic point guard like a Mark Jackson or Muggsy Bogues. But man, he really has a good sense of timing. He has a good sense of rhythm. He knows when to get off the ball. He knows when to pass and transition. He doesn't pound it for as much as Fred did tonight. Again, for the first half of the game, I thought Fred played okay. But I think that the plus minus in this game is not necessarily lying to you. I do want to quickly show that. Flash it, and then we'll get to some of your calls. We have Larry and we have Lane waiting. So in terms of the box score tonight, make of it what you will. Scottie Barnes, 6 for 15 tonight, 14 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. Like, it's just a total all-around game for him. Fred VanVleet, right? 39 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Like, it's such a huge night. But that negative 23 is not lying to you, man. That negative 23 plus minus is not lying to you. You could say, yeah, man, like, oh, he played all the minutes against the starters. It's not that simple. There's a lot of players on this team that played with the starters. It's just that the ball seemed to hum a lot better when he wasn't on the court. And obviously when he comes back onto the court, and I get it. Like, I'm trying to understand the common fan mindset that when a guy has a performance this good, this good by the box score and this dominant by the numbers, it's really hard to say that they didn't have a great game. But this is a team game. It's 5 guys. And there are very few players in the NBA, if any, that can win a game by themselves. You have to play within the team concept. You have to go back and study how many times Nikola Jokic or LeBron James or anyone who's handled this type of usage for an entire game would find an open teammate in the corner, use their gravity. Fred VanVleet, again, I'm not saying he had the worst game of his life. It's too much Fred. It's too much Fred. Sometimes the shot selection is a little bit bad. I get that there's really, apart from Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez, when those guys aren't on the court, like, yeah, go attack. Like, there's no one who can really stay in front of you, and he's moving a lot better. And I really appreciate the seemingly more synergistic relationship that he and Scottie seem to have on the court. There seems to be a lot more dabs, a lot more high fives, a lot more communication. I like that. It's showing up on offense. It's not showing up on defense, right? There's so many times tonight where Drew or Grayson Allen, or there was a rotation where he just gives up a corner, or he gets bullied in the post and the guy just gets right to the front of the rim and the backline defense isn't rotating. So, again, it's really hard to say that a guy who scored 39 points, you might have been better off without him tonight. But I got to tell you, like, you might play better defense. You might move the ball more. Maybe OG has 30 tonight or 25 tonight. Maybe Siakam had 45 tonight. Someone is always going to be the leading scorer. So let's get to some calls here. I'm not even looking at the comments. I'm pretty sure they're all telling me I'm crazy, but let's get to Larry here.
Yeah, they're
Larry,
telling. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
how you
Yeah,
doing?
the comments are telling. Some of them are telling you you're crazy, but
That's okay. I don't care.
hey, look, frustrating game. First quarter, where was the defense? Can you give up any more open threes? Second quarter, the bench unit with Gary, Scottie, and OG. I think it was that group. They went on an 11-4 run and got them. I got the lead temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
Played really well. I thought Precious looked great in that shift. Moved the ball around, played good, better defense. Was getting really encouraged. At halftime, I was still encouraged. Third quarter was disastrous. And, my issue with Fred is there were times where I thought he wasn't as ball dominant. He gave up the ball early in a possession. He
Mm-hmm.
relocated. Guys found him when he relocated and he took an open shot, off of movement, which I'd like to see him do more of. That's when I think he's helpful to the team.
Yeah.
But the better the better his numbers got, the more he tried to do it all himself. And the fourth quarter, I thought, was a disaster. Despite bad defense through most of the game, you're looking at no Giannis, no Middleton, and then Lopez is ejected. And you're not down a lot. And that final 5 minutes, he tried to do it all himself. There was one shot clock violation where he just pounded the ball for, like 23 seconds and then launched a prayer that fell short. Shot clock violation.
And that was when Scottie froze him out of the offense the next time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there was two fast breaks with a man advantage, a player to pass to for an easy basket. And the first one, you could see he put his head down. You knew what was going to happen. Threw it off the bottom of the backboard. And then the second one, I think it was Holiday, blocked it. And I just thought, I could see it happening. He was getting into, Holiday was playing great, getting his numbers, and I could see Fred was, he was getting Fred's numbers, and I just knew it was becoming, a personal battle between him and Holiday. And I don't think Holiday took it as that. I think he plays within the context of his, the flow of his team's offense, and he defends. But
Well, that's it, right? Like, Giannis
but Fred
has.
made it about himself, and it was still winnable right down to the end. It was a one or two possession game, and those two wasted fast breaks resulted in points at the other end, and quickly it was out of hand. And so for the people that look at the box score and say, well, why do people hate on Fred VanVleet? It's to me, you could have it's not about your numbers. I competed in a personal sport, where you go out and you're racing for yourself. This is a team sport, and you do what's right for the team. The idea is to win the game, not to put up the best numbers. And I could care less how many points he got if they lose a game that's winnable. Although I don't mind for the tank, obviously, but I just left this game even more sour on Fred than I've been, and I didn't think that was possible. So, um, I just
Well,
really disappointing.
he's done a great service to his trade value. I mean, his numbers. Look, every single time there was a particular comment in the post game. I want to say about 5 games ago, where he talked about how it's not about numbers, how he doesn't care about his numbers, and then he
I don't
proceeded
believe a
to
word of
basically
that.
talk about his numbers for the
Yeah,
next five
exactly.
minutes,
Right.
which was just, I don't believe people for what they say. I believe them for what they do, right?
Hmm.
Actions speak much louder than words, a platitude that perhaps is as old as time itself. My parents taught me that, right? And consistently, time and time again, I have seen a hot shooting Fred night will always result in him aggressively betting on himself.
Yeah.
And sometimes against like a depleted Orlando team last year, it'll work. It'll work because that team is just, not capable of closing out a fourth quarter. But against a really good team, it's not going to work. But you see it from his perspective. His numbers are down. His shooting percentage is down. He's a very streaky shooter. So when he gets going, like he's just going to empty the clip. And this is how he sees himself. He sees himself as the guy. If anything from that JJ Redick podcast rings relevant to me, it's that he sees himself as Dame Lillard. That's how he talks about himself. That's how
Hmm.
he's always seen himself. He thinks that he can do this. Now he probably thinks tonight is OG's fault. Like I guarantee you, he will never take accountability for being too ball dominant tonight. He'll look at the stat sheet because to those of you in the comments, I'm not trying to be adversarial or, trying to be hostile or immature, but no, sorry, I am a little immature. Um, to those of you saying that this is not Fred's fault, trust me, Fred agrees. Fred is basically y'all. Like you guys, you all grew up on the same early 2000s hero ball bullshit, watching Allen Iverson, Carmelo Anthony, Jerry Stackhouse, guys like that just gun for their own as their teammates watched, offenses became stagnant. But guys, there are really good teams in the league that do not play like that.
Yes. I'm just trying to figure out. You mentioned OG, and Fred's going to think it's OG's fault. OG had 5 points. He was plus three, and I know plus minus. It isn't always as meaningful as people might want it to be. But how do you? How does a guy who's on the floor a lot of the time when Fred is end up, 5 points, but he's plus three
Mm-hmm.
playing? I would presume being one of the few guys who's playing great defense, and Fred's 39 points minus 23. Like I mean that's it in a nutshell. Like there's a team player, and I'm betting on myself player, and I would just I'll let the other callers come on, but I would just hope that if I'm building a team, that doesn't matter what the team is, what sport it's in. I'm looking for people to put the team first, not themselves first. And I would just hope that, I mean, we know that the front office has to be looking at this season and what's happened and where they're at now, and the trade deadline's approaching. They've got to be planning the next moves. I would hope that they're
Mm-hmm.
looking at players who put the team first. Like we talk about Raptor culture and trying to keep ties with the culture from the championship year. Well, Fred's one of those guys who played in that championship team, but that's not the culture I want on my team, because too often it becomes about Fred and not about the team,
So
despite what he says.
Marco has this comment here. He says, "What's going to work, Robert? You need to have a team that can score to win. Who is going to score in today's game? Maybe Gary Trent Jr. did some, but most of the team had ice blocks for hands." Okay, Marco.
I,
So this is the logical fallacy,
can I
right?
just answer? I'll just answer, Marco. Did he see the
Go ahead.
second quarter? Did he see the second quarter? Like the Raptors moved the ball around beautifully, and they were scoring like almost every trip down the floor. Um, Guys who aren't big stats guys, if you share the ball, if they get their clean shots, if they get some touches and they get some rhythm, they can score. How,
Mm-hmm.
like you don't have to be a superstar to score. And but the way the Raptors play, if Fred's taking 28 shots, Siakam only took 13, I think. Like where's the balance in that offense? Like it takes other people out of the game, and then when the ball does find its way into their hands, they don't have any rhythm. And
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Marco
sorry, I
says,
interrupted you, but
no. Go ahead. Marco says, did you see all of the bricked shots outside of the paint, including Scottie? Look, man. Okay, I know this is going to be a very abstract concept for some people to grasp, and I'm just going to try my best to not be super condescending about it because I've taken a lot of this in the comment sections for a while now. So it almost feels like I'm airing grievances at this point. You can't play out the game you didn't play. Okay? You can't say tonight Jeff Doughton sucks because he had 0 points. He didn't play. You don't know what he could have done. You don't know what Precious Achiuwa could have done with an extended 10 minutes in place of OG Anunoby. You don't know what OG Anunoby could have done if they had featured him earlier. You don't know what Pascal Siakam or Scottie Barnes could have done if they were, leading initiating the offense more down the stretch. What I do know, however, is that I have never in my life seen Pascal Siakam get stumped under the backboard.
mm-hmm.
That I have never seen in my life. And while I have my own issues with Siakam's ball dominance at times, I will say this. Playmaking order on this team in terms of playmaking talent is Siakam Barnes, whichever way you want to slice it. Okay. I think Scottie's better. Some people might say the analytics say Siakam is marginally better. Those two are and should be your lead initiators down the stretch. They should be deciding in your offense. Fred VanVleet maybe, could be finishing in your offense, could be spacing your offense. There's a lot of value. Earlier in the film breakdown that I did with and to the guy calling me Doug Smith 2.0, who's been harping on that crap all day. In the earlier film breakdown, this is why you can't take people out of context. You need to, if you're going to make a comment about what I think about Fred VanVleet, you better listen to the whole fucking thing. I said earlier in the Scottie Barnes thing that Fred VanVleet is the perfect pairing for Scottie Barnes in so many ways if he plays more like how he did in New York or in the first half of tonight's game.
Yes. Yeah.
But when he hijacks the offense in the second half, it's not to the team's benefit. And frankly, he is probably the fourth guy among, or maybe the fifth guy on this team that I would choose to play that style of basketball with. It's not because he's not, super hot from the field or that he can't hit deep range threes and they're super exciting. And I'm sure you at home watching are looking at, Scottie and OG, kind of bricking shots and you're just like, oh, these guys didn't show up today. You have to look at the quality of possessions that are being generated for those guys by this guy. If you pass to a guy in the corner, consider this one pass that really stuck out to me. It was OG wide open in the corner, wide open. Fred VanVleet dribbles into the paint, flings it out to OG. It's a totally off-target pass. By the time OG gathers it from up here, brings it down, he regathers his balance. The defender's already caught up.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's like a turnover, man. You have a wide open three for one of your best shooters, and you mess it up because you're not talented enough to make that type of play. Fred VanVleet has always overestimated himself. It's the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world. It's a sort of catch-22. When he was an undrafted free agent and he bet on himself, he massively overestimated how good he was when he walked into the Raptors facility for the first time and said, well, they can just cut one of these guys. He had DeLon Wright, Corey Joseph, and Kyle Lowry in front of him in the pecking order. And he still chose to do that because he thought he was better than one of those guys. And he was not better than one of those guys. But because of aggressively betting on himself, he did manage to push two of those guys out. And he became the backup. So therein, bet on yourself became something that works. And if I could examine the brain of Fred VanVleet, it would be like the brain of any addict, right? Like any human being, really. You do something over and over again. It keeps working. It's really difficult to adjust when it stops working. But try betting on red in roulette and double up your stakes for every time you win and tell me when you go bankrupt. It will happen. Yeah. It has to happen. It can't just never happen. You eventually do crap out. And I think that most people who are 28, who've been in the league as long as Fred VanVleet, who've accomplished as much as he has, tend to get over themselves a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They do tend to understand that there's more to life than scoring stats. But I think right now it is about the next contract. And, some people said, man, I'm so happy Fred VanVleet, the Raptors didn't, sign that contract with Fred VanVleet. I got to tell you, if the Raptors had signed that contract with Fred VanVleet, we're probably a playoff team right now because he wouldn't feel the pressure to do this. But he is
Perhaps, yeah.
feeling the pressure because he's in a shooting slump that's gone on for 12 months. He needs to prove himself. Tonight was a nationally televised game. Okay? Nationally televised. TNT, everybody's watching. All of America can watch this game with no Giannis. Good for Giannis, just ghosting a nationally televised game. And what did they see? They saw Fred VanVleet going toe to toe with a top 5 point guard in the NBA, mano a mano. And they, if they are frankly stupid, probably walk away with the exact same conclusion. Fred VanVleet showed up, nobody else showed up. That's probably it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the commentators are telling them that too, so that doesn't help. I mean, the
Great. Do it.
off,
Yeah.
listening to Alvin and Sherm and the boys, like it's terrible. But hey, Robert, thank you for that Scottie video that you did with Leo. Fantastic. And I'll let you go and on to the next caller. Cheers, man.
All right. Thanks, Larry.
Okay.
All right. I had said yesterday that we were going to go with 5 minute calls, but Larry hadn't called for like I think 3 shows, and we really needed to make up for those 3 shows with him. So I hope that was an engaging conversation. I don't think that was necessarily just me talking to Larry. I think it was me talking to the chat as well. So hopefully, like we almost co-hosted that opening. All right, next up we got Lane, then we got Timberland, and then we got Samuel. Lane, what's up?
What's up? How you doing, man?
I'm good.
I promise you, this is not going to be a Fred VanVleet call. I want to talk about something else that I've really noticed, not only just this season, but I mean, this is just objectively basketball. As somebody who's played and coached at baseball, basketball, high level, sent guys to go play in college, there's something called momentum in sports, right? And no matter how hot you are throughout the game, right? Like the Raptors tonight, we took more shots. I mean, you could lose momentum so easily, right? I mean, like you said, we took 10 more free throws. We had what, 7 or 8 more shots.
We had 15 more shots.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's nuts, but
I mean that's a little bit overstated because Precious. I believe it was Precious and OG had like 6 or 7 Moses Malone taps. I feel like that's a little bit disingenuous to say 15 more possessions, but they definitely won the possession battle.
No,
they crashed the offensive glass.
Exactly. We had more we had more turnovers caused. I mean, more fast break points. But you have to look at how many were left on the board when we come down and be a wide open 3 missed in the corner by Gary. I think Gary had like 2 or 3 of those tonight. And that's a momentum changer, right? In the paint, I mean, not calling out Scottie, not hating on Scottie, but in the paint when he puts it up, rolls off the rim, puts it up again, rolls off the rim, other team gets it. I mean, that's just about a turnover too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
It's very deflating for the offense when, one of your featured guys is missing point blank layups. Like I completely agree. Like that specific possession that I cited where Precious and OG just went up, 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 and they just couldn't get it to fall.
Right.
Like you as an entire team are like, that's 2 we just lost. Right.
Exactly.
But the Raptors got a huge break, in my opinion, on the momentum shift for the ejection of Brook Lopez, right? I mean, depending on how you feel about it, I
think that got the crowd into it. I really think that got the crowd on the bench into it because, I mean, you see Lopez and his boys on the bench hyping him up saying, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but that's BS, that's BS, that's BS. He's hyping his boys up. As someone who's been in a dugout almost all my life, I've seen coaches get tossed out of games. Guess what happens? That team, the next inning, goes on a run. I've played in basketball tournaments. I was never a starter, so I was never very good. But I've been in basketball tournaments where dudes have got teed up, and next thing you know, their team goes on a 10-0 run.
Let me ask you a question as someone who's been in the dugout, been in the basketball games. I've never played baseball, I don't think, like since I was in grade 4, but I have played other sports. Have you noticed that when the intensity dials up that some guys check out and some guys check in mentally?
It depends. I mean, I know it's so overused and cliche, but it depends on the dog and the guys. I mean, really, you find out who's made for it and who's not made for it in the moment. You really do.
I want to be very careful about what I say here because I've been accused of a lot of Siakam slander in my life. But it was one thing that I noticed was there have been a couple of times when the game has gotten dialed up. The intensity is dialed up. And certain guys have responded to that intensity. They've sort of played up to it, and certain guys have sort of shied away from it. They've become somewhat invisible in that pressure moment. When that dispute, tussle,
Mhm.
whatever, between Gary Trent Jr. and Brook Lopez, I could not help notice but Pascal Siakam somewhat absent from that scrum.
Oh yeah.
And that was weird to me because you had assistant coaches like Jamal McGlure and Adrian Griffin, both ex-players, by the way. Their instincts just kicked in to get
Yeah.
in the way because obviously Brook Lopez is just a very impressively large human being, and they felt Gary needed some backup.
Mhm.
But the very fact that Jamal freaking McGlure has to get off the bench and get a technical for you, and your captain, your best player, your star player, is standing there with the ball, kind of staring off into the sunset,
Mhm.
wondering, like, oh, when's this going to be over? When can we play basketball again? That
Mhm.
to me was just weird, and he didn't really seem to like be completely into the game after that. To be honest, I can't remember completely, but it was just like in that moment, it felt like you're right. The momentum swung for them,
Mhm.
but they were the one who got their player ejected. It shouldn't have
Yeah.
swung for them. I mean, their player was the one who supposedly was the agitator in that. It's the Raptors who should have been like woken up,
It's
but it
crazy
didn't
how
feel like they did.
it's so crazy how sports works because logically in your mind you think that's the way it should be. I mean, for everything, like you think logically, okay, if someone does something bad, they get punished, the other side should have the momentum. But so very often in sports have I seen it be the opposite. For example, this past fall, I was in a high level tournament. I was coaching in it, a prospect tournament,
Hmm.
and there was this coach on the other team. This baseball, and he was so pissed that this umpire went up, literally spat in the guy's face. We had to call the police, right? Get
Hmm.
this guy out of here. The game's over at that point. We had lost. I mean, I'm sorry, not we lost. We won the game. We won the game by 3 runs. Right?
Hmm.
Game's over. We got one more out to go. He was so pissed. Well, they had a double header. So they're playing the next game against this team who's better than us, and we just beat them by 3 runs. Like this team has a Louisville commit that's throwing 96. They had a Vandy commit at shortstop. I mean, I know this probably means nothing to you, but to baseball people, I mean,
Vanderbilt,
Vanderbilt.
Louisville, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I understand Division I programs. Yeah.
it's freaking nuts. Like those are blue chip programs for baseball.
Yep.
This team that just got their head coach thrown out of the game, that has D2 and D3 commits, like they're good players, but they're
I
not
understand.
to the
There's a
level
gap.
D1. And they blew this team out. They run rolled them in 4 innings without their head coach. But you would think they don't have their head coach. They're playing D1 guys. Why didn't they just roll over and die?
I
Because they
think that high stress situations like that expose things. They always do. To put it in there for, I mean, I'm sure there are people in this chat who've never, once played competitive sports, and to them I'd say, think about a really bad relationship when a birthday comes up. That's a high stress situation. An
yeah,
anniversary.
yeah.
Everything bubbles up to the surface when
Mm.
things get pushed up a level, right?
Well,
And as you're saying here, like those guys, maybe they're not as talented and they weren't as experienced, but they were made of different stuff.
right. Well, it's like it's also like too. I hate to relate it to this, but uh, like war, PTSD type situations, when people are put into those type situations, they just go blank and they go all out. Like there's been stories of guys that go off the battle and they're
Hmm.
surrounded by 10 people and they kill all 10 of them. Like they shouldn't be able to do it, but they do just because of the situation they're put in. So just, I mean, it relates to sports. I mean, it's such a tricky thing. You think we would have taken advantage of the Lopez ejection, but we didn't. And back
I
to your,
mean, he was killing us. Him
oh,
going out absolutely enabled Fred to go to the basket as often as he did. It could have enabled Scottie,
mm,
Pascal to go to the basket at will.
yeah,
They aren't playing Serge Ibaka, so they really don't. I mean, Bobby Portis isn't like a great defender by any means at the paint, and he's okay.
mm,
Drew Hall, you're playing Grayson Allen and Joe Ingles and like Pat Connaughton, like I'm sorry, the Raptors were a way more talented team tonight. They
I'm
they
not.
were.
I am not mad, contrary to the popular belief from fans. I am not mad at the open threes we gave up tonight. What I'm mad about is that we let Joe Ingles drive into the paint on us. Why the hell is that happening? Why?
I mean, it's a massive overreaction to every single player. I mean, there was a single play, I
Mm,
remember it very vividly, where Drew Holiday is dribbling up the court. He gets a
mm,
bit of a head of steam ahead of Scottie Barnes, right?
mm,
He gets at Scottie Barnes. He goes past Scottie Barnes. The minute he takes a step past Scottie Barnes, he makes a pass to the corner, and Scottie is the guy to rotate out. That never ever should happen. like ever in a million years. Like the
They look
same guy had to guard the guy who blew past him and the guy who passed to him. It really felt like two guys, three guys were really guarding everybody, and it feels like
yeah,
a lot of the other guys
yeah,
were invisible on
yeah.
defense. I think Siakam had a really good block in the
Mhm.
fourth or third, and then Scottie followed it up with a block of his own. So I mean, there were moments, but for the most part, like the containment of just, and these are not talented penetrators. Like you're right, Joe Ingles getting Gary Trent off the bounce or getting Fred off the bounce. It just never should happen. Like there's, it
And
is
the
such
and
a
the
frustrating.
and the crazy thing is too, it's not a lack of talent. In my opinion, you may disagree with me. I think the Raptors have one of the best five starting fives in the league. It's not a lack of talent, it's a lack of fight. We put up 122 points a game. Where's our defense? I mean, at one point in the game, or just a lack of connectiveness, because at one point in the game, Precious blew coverage on the defensive side, let a wide open layup in. And of course, you know what they all do. They all turn around, put their arms up, and look at each other, which I've never seen
Right.
happen before this year. And then the next time down the court, Scottie passes the Precious, Precious passes the Scottie, and then like Precious sets a screen into Scottie Barnes. And then like Scottie just kind of like looks at him and then passes him back the ball, and then Precious does his little thing, drives into the paint. I can't remember if it was a make or miss or how it went, because I was just sitting there like, how disconnected are these guys, like from each other? Like it, I don't want to say that they don't like playing with each other, because obviously I'm not in that locker room. I don't know, but it looks like they just don't like playing with each other. I mean, there's no fight for each other. Like you're right. After the Lopez thing, any team should get together and say, we're gonna go kick ass these last 5 minutes. Their second best player tonight's out, and the paint's wide open, and they just didn't. There's no fight.
It's interesting because in the very last game we had Quentin Grimes talking a little bit of shit, right? To
Scotty's on.
no, he was talking shit to Pascal Siakam.
You're right. No, you're right. You're right.
And what happened was very interesting because immediately Scottie Barnes just dialed it up. There was another play where someone messed with OG. I can't remember who exactly it was, but someone had shoved OG.
Mhm.
And Scottie Barnes, hold on, it was Ben Matherin. When Ben Matherin had that altercation with OG, if you recall,
Mhm.
Scottie Barnes made Ben Matherin's life a living hell for the rest of the night. He was face guarding him. He was like hugging him. Like he wouldn't
Yeah.
let him breathe. He was talking shit to him. Like Ben Matherin was just like, get this guy off of me. There are guys on this team who will play
Mhm.
for each other. OG Anunoby came to Gary Trent's defense. Scottie Barnes came to Gary Trent's defense.
Which is good. Which is it's so nice to see that the guys are sticking up for each other. However, why aren't we doing this from the get go? Like
Okay.
sometimes in games that I have coached, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems, I mean, especially in baseball, it's such a momentum game where we'll be down five, right? And then
Yep.
it's hard to make that up against high level talent. So maybe we'll score three in the bottom of the seventh, because high school only plays 7 innings. And after the game, everyone's all high, and it's like, why weren't you guys having this much energy the previous 6 innings? Why
Yep.
weren't we doing this before? Why did it take for us to have our asses on the fire for us to finally pick up the intensity, pick up the energy?
Yep.
And that's great that they're sticking up for each other. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, why does it take for something to happen for us to respond to it? Why don't we make the response right away before something even happens?
Yeah. I mean, like that conversation that that leak to the media about Nick Nurse having private meetings with the players that didn't go well. That seems to have signaled a very big shift in how this team is playing.
Oh, 100%.
The offense seems to be clicking a lot better. The defense seems to have fallen off a cliff. There is a there is a bit of a divide. Thaddeus Young, after that altercation with Scottie Barnes, has not touched the floor, has not sniffed the floor.
I think
Yes,
there's
of
more to
course, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's a lot that players know that we don't know. I do want your live reaction to this, and after that, I mean, we can get to the next caller. But I'm just curious. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see here. Do you see it?
Yeah, the Scotty. Yeah, by KG. Everyone knows that. It would be stupid for somebody to want to give up on him. I mean, I don't know in the NBA, and I'm not saying this because Scotty's so great. I think right now he's playing like the third best player in his draft class. I think he's playing like a fringe top 15 player in the past
You
five
think
drafts.
he's played like the third best player in his draft class so far? Who do you think's
This
playing
year,
like?
compared to his potential this year, yes. But I think he can easily be the best if he played up to his. He's not playing bad. The issue is, I just know he could play so much better.
He's averaging, I mean, prior to this game, he was averaging 19 points per game in January.
Exactly.
He's gone through a slew of
He's
injuries, but
played. Yes.
but I do want your reaction to this.
Oh,
This is
well,
value over replacement, and this is the 2021 draft class.
yeah, it's
Scotty
crazy.
Barnes,
Yeah,
number one. Evan Mobley, number two, right? And Franz Wagner, number three. And I think this year I could make a very solid case that Franz Wagner has had a better season than Scotty, but I cannot make a very coherent case for Evan Mobley having a better season than Scotty so
I
far
think
this year.
defensively you can, not
Sure,
offensively.
I mean
However,
defensively you can, but offensively he's
I
been awful.
I would like to see, and this would be so interesting to me. I'd like to see Mobley and Barnes switch places and see how that goes. I mean, just think about it for a second. I think Barnes' job in Cleveland would be made a lot easier. And I
Oh
think
hell yes, hell
probably
yes. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, like the
on
movement
ball.
around it, like a big who actually dives to the basket and finishes at an elite level, like Jared Allen, like Scotty Barnes, are averaging like 8 assists per game. I mean, if they ran more of their offense through him, I think like I think Scotty is, in my opinion, if I had to do a redraft of 2021, I would take him number one. I would take Mobley number two. I would probably take Franz number three, and then everything else is up for debate after that. Cade, Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, whatever.
I mean, it's
But I
also
think, yeah,
we're
go.
we're in year two. I mean, maybe 10 years down the line, we're talking about Bones Highlands, a two-time MVP or something. I
We're
mean,
not.
I know
We're not.
I know we're
We're
not,
not.
but I'm just saying, like
I
it's all
promise you, we're not.
it's
Like,
so
mark my words on this. Bones Highland is
I
not going
I
to be a
know.
one-time or two-time MVP. He'd be very lucky to be an All-Star at some point.
I'm gonna put
Trey
five.
Murphy is the guy who I think, like, of that group who could elevate
Oh,
himself to like a two, three-time All-Star.
oh yeah, but I'm gonna put 5 cents on that bet though, because that's gonna make me a millionaire when he is a two-time MVP. I'm just messing. I'm just
I
messing.
promise you, it's not gonna happen. All right,
No, I
thanks a
know.
lot, Lane. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for bringing the baseball perspective. I mean, we had the canoeing perspective, and we have the baseball perspective. It's very cool how different sports and competitive athletes, and we've had two competitive athletes now in a row. It's very cool to talk with people who've actually been in the dugout in this case.
Yeah, I
All right,
appreciate
Lane. Thanks a lot, man. Have a good
it.
night.
Good night.
All right. Um, MSJ Bones is good, but no, that's funny. Um, Country Kung, I think the Cavs are a contender, and honestly, I think Mobley gives them a lot more of what they need. It's just for a normal situation, a jumbo playmaker is so valuable. I realize, because of when we did the stream, that there's probably a large segment of people in this, chat who haven't seen like the last video that we did. But I encourage you to check it out when you have a chance because, it's like we broke down stuff like this. Here's Scotty with like five defenders around him, and he can see right over it, and he has the dexterity with both hands to be able to make a play. I mean, those guys do not grow on trees, especially guys who are engaged and capable on defense. Like I realize his defense has been somewhat of a hit or miss this year. He's been all the way up to 68th percentile, 69th percentile at his best. He's been all the way down to like 49th percentile at his worst. So he's an average to above average defender right now. I think he needs to get a lot better, but he has the tools to get there, which is more than I can say for, someone like Alperen Şengün, right? So there's an upside element here, and I just think that when you actually start stacking up Scotty's, like here's Scotty Barnes relative to two franchise players, just to give you a concept of where Scotty is as a player right now, right? It's like if you really look at this, I mean, you could make a very solid case that Anthony Edwards is definitely the best player of this bunch. And by the way, all of these guys are 21, even though Edwards and LaMelo Ball have had like 1 year advantage on Scotty and in terms of experience. And Scotty's had like pretty much the season from hell this month notwithstanding. So, but like when you look at the two-way potential of Scotty here, where he's halfway competent, if not above average, on defense among rotation players, and very, very competent on offense. Now ranking 75th percentile in the offense among rotational players at just age 21. I make a very solid case that the Hornets would probably win more with Scotty Barnes than LaMelo Ball, even though LaMelo Ball is a better offensive player right now and probably puts up way better box score stats. So I think like, to those people who look at a game and they say, okay, 13 points, 11, 12 rebounds, like 5 assists, 3 steals, like this is really valuable stuff. Like it may not stick out to you the way 20 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds does, but it's a numbers bias. You have to look at shot attempts, shot quality, like how the team played around that guy. I think it's really important. All right, next up we got Timberland. Timberland, how are
Okay,
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Everyone's gonna think I just pile on top of Bert all the time, but I was just I haven't gone back to look at exactly every single lineup that came in, but I know for a fact in the second quarter when Precious and Chris came in with OG, Scottie, and Gary,
Hmm.
they erased a 10-point deficit and took the lead. So that team was moving the ball. They were all getting shots. And I just wanted to make a couple quick points for the people that think that we're always on Fred's case. And that is that when Fred was up until the game in New York or in Toronto where New York won,
Hmm.
Fred was averaging, let me see where I wrote it down here, 15.9 field goal attempts per game and scoring 18.8 points. And the Raptors were 15 and 19 in those games.
Hmm.
And basically, since that game is when, other than tonight, um, that's when he stopped taking as many shots. And the Raptors, let me just pull it up. Sorry, Rob. I had
No
it
worries.
ready and then I lost it.
No worries.
Um, since that game, the Raptors were 4-1. He was
Hmm.
taking 12.4 field goal attempts and only making 4.4 points less per game. The point is that when he takes over a game, there's quality scoring and there's not quality scoring. And what happened tonight, as we saw, is it became iso ball, and Pascal was equally at fault for this. There was a couple of points I tweeted out in the game where Precious was standing wide open on the perimeter, but
Hmm.
instead he chose to drive into three players in the paint when Brook was still in the game. Fred was doing the same thing. And yeah, as you pointed out, it was a nationally televised game. I'm not unhappy about it because I think it ups his trade value. But I mean, let's think about this fact to the players that, or to the people that think that we're being really hard on Fred. Look at what John Morant does. Look at what Kyrie Irving does. You would think that maybe they'd be taking 30 shots a game. They're not. They're passing the ball, they're distributing the ball, and they're the best players on their team. So all we're asking is that there's a consistency so that everyone stays in rhythm. Fred's biggest excuse this year, initially before the back injury thing came up, which funny how he's playing now, was that he was out of rhythm because he wasn't getting enough shots. So if you buy that narrative and that rhetoric, why then are his teammates who are only getting maybe 5 shots a game not afflicted by the same problem?
Well, that's also, it's such horseshit. When I heard that, I was like, man, you played off of Kyle. You've played backup with the second unit. You weren't always this way. I've heard rambling rants from him excessively about how he prefers to be a point guard. I literally, like, the thing is, in a relationship, when you're with a partner who gaslights you constantly and you start feeling the need to record things just so that you can
Yeah,
maintain your semblance of sanity. So I
yeah.
went back and I started checking Fred VanVleet interviews just to maintain that I didn't imagine that he said some of the stuff that he said. And he's on record, saying like he'd be really happy if his teammates take a step up, how, it'd be really, really great and he doesn't have to score as much. He would be really relieved. And sometimes the guy says something with such conviction that you almost start to believe him. You're like, oh my God, is he just like a stickler? Is he just waiting for his young teammates to match his level of aggression and intensity? Is that why he's sort of like taking these shots because he just feels like he has to? And it's just not freaking true. Because when he was going through the shooting slump of his life, it was OG Anunoby who was getting a soft, all-star buzz, right? Where the hell is that right now? And by the way, OG at his best was averaging like 50 to 53% from the field, far more efficient scorer than Fred VanVleet, and very capable three-point shooter. And now that he's worked out the hand issue, I mean, we've seen really good OG Anunoby three-point shooting games. but suddenly he feels completely out of rhythm the last few days, right? So it's like,
Exactly. And
how
not
does you
one
going get other people going is kind of the thing. When Scottie gets going, the whole team gets going. We've seen it over and over
exactly.
again, right? And
And not
but
one teammate has trashed Fred's shooting, right?
right. Yeah. And that's leadership for you, right? Like there are some really good dudes on this team. Gary, he has every freaking right. Like I don't know if people caught that clip on IG of Gary Trent's reaction to Fred VanVleet's like chuck. Did you see it? Where he just kind of turned and walked away from it. Like when Fred took it, you can tell from the body language between these two guys. Even that whole Thad and Scottie dispute started out as a Fred and Gary dispute. I've never once heard Fred VanVleet say, well, sorry, Gary Trent say, oh, well, when your leader, takes like such stupid shots. Like he never did that. Like I just have such an amount of respect for certain guys on this team that they're not going to throw Fred under the bus when he's shooting poorly. They continue to maintain that he's the leader. They continue to maintain that he's fighting through it, that they're going to believe in him. And it's just like, man, like what a great bunch of guys to keep supporting this. But you can see it in like when he goes into this hyper, alpha scorer mode that they just don't like it because they see what
Mhm.
he's doing wrong and he doesn't.
Mhm. I mean, let me ask you a question. Who would you rather have? I mean, the first one's really easy. Halliburton or Fred? Halliburton.
Halliburton,
Would you rather have Marcus Smart or Fred?
Marcus Smart.
I'd rather have Marcus Smart.
I mean, you can go down the list. Like, I mean, starting point guards in the East, like there aren't many that I would take Fred over.
My point is that Halliburton takes 15.1 field goal attempts, so less than Fred, and Smart takes 9.5 and makes 3 points less than Fred.
Wow.
And they impact winning on their team.
No, they absolutely do because they're both guys who are really over themselves, right? And they're both guys who
Mm-hmm.
believe in playmaking as opposed to dominating basketball possessions. And I think that those are like really, um, like there's, like I was thinking like, in terms of Fred trade packages, like what team could really use him, what team would see him as an upgrade over what they already have. And I was drawing a lot of blanks. People keep saying Orlando, and I'm just like, why is a team that's aggressively tanking going to trade for a veteran, who requires
I
such a
mean,
big
Wendell
salary?
Carter Jr., please. I'll
I,
take Wendell Carter Jr. in
I
a
wouldn't mind. I
heartbeat.
wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Markel Fultz.
Maybe. I mean, maybe at least he wouldn't be trying to jack up shots, right?
I mean, he takes good shots, like for the most part.
Mm. I
He's
mean,
never
why?
struck me as selfish.
Why is it that everyone can understand that yesterday when they won in New York, they won a lot because Brunson and Randall were getting playing iso ball and being selfish, but they can't understand it when Fred does it on our end.
Yeah, I mean, look, like offensive rating is exploding around the NBA because of the complication of offenses, like because they're so unguardable. Like there are plays where I have gone, not usually the Raptors, but if I break down like Lakers, Celtics, or Bucks, Mavs, and there are certain plays where it's not even clear to me watching in slow motion where the breakdown occurred or who was supposed to rotate because the play was so freaking complicated and so damn difficult to guard. The Raptors offense is not difficult to guard, regardless of how Fred VanVleet feels about himself. He is not difficult to guard. When he's shooting, like he has a hot shooting night, like any volume shooter can get really hot very quickly. Joe Ingles was hot, tonight. Like he hit a couple of threes. Brook
Crafty.
Lopez
He's
was
so
hot.
crafty.
He is so crafty, and Brook Lopez was hot from three. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this team that could have hijacked their offense at any given time, but the Bucks don't play like that because they actually do have aspirations to be a good team. There's nobody out there, and I'm sure even if there is somebody out there, like a young guy or an older guy, and to those people who say Masai and Bobby have really lost their touch with their recent free agency signings, I promise you, leadership cascades impact. You have to look at guys like Yuta Watanabe who failed in your system and are thriving in other systems, and you have to ask, what did we not do? What did he not do? Who is at fault? Because you had this guy for 2 years, and he was a switchable, long, tall, selfless, role-playing, shooting defender guy. and he is exactly what your bench is exactly lacking right now. And you let him go through the door, and people can say it's on him. It's his fault. Maybe him getting, not re-signed by the Raptors motivated him to work hard. I promise you, Yuta Watanabe worked very hard last year. But it's like, how do you feel in an offense and it's like, you have to look at the playmaking potential and differential here. You have 3 very, very good playmakers in Brooklyn that are finding that guy every chance they get in the corner, wide open, dunks, wide open. They're getting him the ball early. Like, it's incredible that you would have guys of the status of Ben Simmons, multi-time All-Star, the status of Kevin Durant, former MVP, NBA champion, the status of even Kyrie Irving. And I know everyone's down on these 3 guys and everybody hates them. I get it. But look at their actual place in NBA history. In a lot of ways, 2 of those guys should be top 75 players of all time. One of them is a top 10 player of all time, in my opinion. And they still don't have such a big ego that they could find Yuta Watanabe open for a corner 3. Why can't you? There's so many
I don't
times
think
last
Kyrie
year.
Irving's thing is negative on court. It's just off court.
It's off court, it's all 3 of them have off court, image issues, and they definitely, should probably hire a different PR department. But my point notwithstanding, that if anyone, like if I put these 4 players in a room together, who do you think has the biggest bragging rights? Ben Simmons, Fred VanVleet, Kevin Durant,
Katie.
and Kyrie Irving. Next up.
Katie.
Next.
Irving.
Next.
I think I put Fred ahead of Ben just because he won the title.
I wouldn't.
Not for game, like in terms of their powers on the floor. It would be a toss up for me because I think that Ben, just how he played in that final series for Philly, and then how he acted after the fact, because they did try to go see him in the summer. If we're to believe what went down,
he's younger. Number one, he was a former number one overall pick. Like, yeah. I mean, he was a dominant, like, play, and he's a multi-time All-Star, and I believe he's made an All-NBA team. So I think, like, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I just think, like, of all those guys, I mean, okay, well, I mean, let's not put career value. Let's just say trade value at their peak. Like their peaks are not comparable. Like, there's 3 guys and then there's 1 guy. And you can say Fred had an all-star season because he had a half-season shooting stretch where it's, like, amazing. But Ben Simmons was, in my opinion, the best defender in the league for an entire year. I think that should freaking count for something, Sure, I definitely think he should have won Defensive Player over Rudy Gay. My point is that these are all-stars you're talking about, Rudy Gobert. So I think all of these guys are all-stars, but 3 of them, and 3 of them are deemed, like, the egocentric maniacs, all 3 of them, KD, quits.
All 4 of them.
All 4 of them are deemed egocentric maniacs. But why is it that those 3 egocentric maniacs have no ego in initiating Nick Claxton and getting him going? Like, you don't think that Precious Achiuwa could do so much of what Nick Claxton does for you? Of course he could, but he needs to get regular touches to do that. He needs to be found in rhythm. You need to use your gravity to actually find that guy. Yuta Watanabe, Joe Harris. It's so frustrating to me to see Masai and Bobby scout really well, find guys who really could do stuff for you, and then have them come into the system and not work out. And it happens, like, it's like there's an old saying. I used to have roommates. When I was in my early 20s, I had a ton of roommates, and I was a very difficult person to live with. I would often listen to music really loud at night. I was, sometimes, like, I would just go zone in and out. I was very critical. And so I had like 3 or 4 bad roommates in a row. I thought bad roommates. And we can debate all day whether or not they were bad roommates. But my friend said something to me I'll never forget. Said, Rob, if you've had 4 or 5 bad roommates in a row, it's time to consider the fact that maybe you're the bad roommate. And I thought that was very, very important. And from that day till this day, I don't believe I've had any really issues with roommates, because I've always taken the time to reflexively look back at myself and say, maybe I am doing something wrong here. How can I fix this? Because I really do believe tonight, and we're going to listen to Fred VanVleet's, post game. And I honestly, there's a part of me that wants to get my popcorn ready, because there's no chance in hell that he's going to express that he was too ball dominant and that he should have found his teammates more. And I just think that that's such a major issue. And I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to.
I think you've hit on a really good point here, which is the leadership. Because if you look back to when things started to change, it's when Kyle left. Kyle was the immaculate leader because he was knowing the box scores. There used to be a bunch of nerds that would pull up these to look at how all the bench players performed with everyone on the team, and Kyle made every single one of them better. There was only one guy, and I can't remember which player it was now, that didn't perform better with Kyle, but he had only played with him a few minutes, so it was kind of a moot point. But Fred is the voice, and was the voice until recently, until that loss against New York at home, was the voice in the room. And I'm wondering, I wanted to ask you about Pascal because he doesn't look like himself. Yes, he's still scoring, and yes, he's still filling up the box score, but he looks drawn. He looks tired. You brought up the point about how he almost seemed timid in that fight. Portis kind of came at him and he backed away and almost looked scared. I wonder if he's panicking, thinking that what's going on with Fred is going to also affect his future and whether he'll be gone from Toronto, and that's why he's playing differently or looking tentative, because bottom line is we need a better leader, and I think once Fred is gone and Scottie takes over, there'll be an abrupt change in the identity and culture again. But right now, I think I just wanted to get your feedback on what you think's going on with Pascal, because I do think it's impacting him emotionally.
I want to extend like an olive branch to Pascal Siakam. I've been very hard on him this season, and I never resorted to any of the overly toxic shit in the bubble, but I was very hard on him in the bubble as well. And I took the whole, didn't touch a ball for 4 months thing very, very seriously. Um, Almost as a sign that the guy didn't care or that he should have, and I think that CJ McCollum hit on it in his past thing. He said if you had to live your life out in front of the whole world, you'd struggle a lot too. And I think that that's fair too. I have to say that I have no idea what it's like to be from Douala, Cameroon. I have no idea what Pascal Siakam went through. I do know that he has made more of his life than 99.99999% of people will ever do. Like from point A to point B, if point A was where he was born and who he was born as, and point B is who he is today, the amount of work required to become that person, it's tremendous. However, there is always going to be some element of a personality that is, going to be drawn to old triggers, old traumas, and I don't know. Like I remember kind of coasting through the pandemic. I got to tell you, I didn't panic for 4 months. I panicked for like 2 weeks. I, got my toilet paper and then I moved on with it. And, it might be difficult for someone who's lived in North America and Western Europe for his whole life to understand
It
what
might have
the
reminded him of his
connotation.
father. It might have reminded him of his father's death, though. That's what I thought of, because
I don't want to
like you, I
psychoanalyze the
lost
guy,
my
but
parents very young, and I live alone. So the pandemic for me was really difficult. So I
look,
thought
like
of that.
I lost both my parents as well when I was very young. So
Hmm.
I'm very sorry to hear that. But what
It's
I'm
okay. I was
saying is
three,
that
so
when you hear pandemic, like you and I have never, to my experience, to my knowledge, experienced a serious pandemic in our lives. We've never experienced anything of that variety where our health could be at risk just walking out of the house. But there are certain countries in which that is very prevalent. So,
hmm
how do people respond when situations become uncomfortable and unfamiliar is something that is really going back to the psychology of the human being. Um,
hmm
there are certain people in this world where they need everything to be just so, and they know that. They need their milk just so. If you get them a different type of milk, they freak out, they panic. I think we've all met people like that. We call them obsessive compulsive, we make fun of them, but there are people who are just wired to have a certain level of sureness and consistency in their lives. And for Pascal Siakam, having Fred VanVleet here has been a constant. He's
hmm
been one of his closest friends, closest confidants. They see themselves as leaders of this team. If there's even some notion that Fred is definitely on his way out, or that he may be on his way out, that could very easily destabilize someone who is prone
That's what
to
I'm thinking.
having a necessity for stability. I hope that that was a balanced and nuanced way to present that without taking any digs or shots at Pascal Siakam. I have no idea what he's going through. And to be honest, if I was in his position and my best friend was about to be traded, I mean, look at how Kyle Lowry reacted to his best friend being traded. I mean, he was pissed. He was upset. He ghosted the Raptors
Mhm.
management. He wasn't happy. He was considering demanding a trade. Like there's all sorts of stuff that, and I mean these are human beings at the end of the day. Like how does Scottie Barnes respond to his friend being called out and benched on the team in Gary Trent Jr., you know? Does he get sour against the people who are doing that? Does he become a little moody? The human dynamics to coaching are so extreme to
All the
management.
intangibles.
And you know, for Raptor fans who are newer to basketball, because let's be honest, there's a lot of people who ushered in around the championship time, and I don't think that maybe we've experienced the level of dysfunction that we've seen this year ever, because you've always had Kyle Lowry, you always had Dwayne Casey. These guys are straight shooters. Like there's
Yeah,
like
they can go through the Tracy and the T Mac and Vince days and what and the
yeah, and
struggles and the Chris Bosh days and
exactly.
yeah. There's
Yeah,
there's a lot.
so
I mean, that's and to be fair to you, yes, of course, we jump on Pascal sometimes for his shot making or his shot selection when he doesn't always make the best choice. But I think you've been pretty fair about saying that Pascal's been had a great season and that he's put up great numbers. It's more about the fact that you're not really thrilled about paying him 35% of the roster salary.
yeah. No, absolutely. And I just, yeah. So anyway, Timberland, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. Any final thoughts? Anything you
No, I
want
just
to
wanted to
add?
touch on those things. I'm sure I'll think of something when I get off, but I just wanted to touch on the Fred things. I saw people jumping on that and wanted to bring up some comparisons so that they understand where we're coming from.
Always super valuable. Thank you, Timberland.
Okay, bye.
Cheers. Bye. Um, Next up we have your goat. Detroit, what's up?
Yo, what's good, man? How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah. So you guys lost today. I mean, Fred had a pretty good game, but I mean, it doesn't really matter if you guys lose. Main thing I kind of wanted to touch on is about the leadership situation I think you guys are in because
Sure.
I mean, I remember when Raptors had Kyle Lowry, as a lot of people mentioned here that he was the leader. He not totally leaded that team, but he was the leader on that championship team and it really helped the bench, helped the team. I remember watching the Bucks series and the 76ers series. He was a good leader. And now that he's gone and Fred VanVleet thinks he's a leader, although he's horrible at it, you guys are not winning. Same with my team. We've had 10 years without a leader. We've been horrible. And I
Who
play
was the last leader you had? Ben Wallace, Chauncey Billups? It's been more than 10 years.
probably Chauncey because Ben Wallace left before Chauncey. So yeah, it was Chauncey. It was Chauncey Billups. And I play soccer professional. Well, not professional. I play in the team. And last year we were a very good team and we had a leader. I remember he was a very good guy and
Let me
he
ask you a question.
decided to
How
leave.
did your leader delegate leadership? Because you know, when you say that Kyle was the leader of the Raptors championship, I think leadership was pretty sparsed out throughout the championship. I think Danny Green was the leader. I think Serge was a leader. I think Marc Gasol and Kawhi led in their own way. I think, you know, Fred was a leader. I think Nick Nurse was a leader. I think there were
Mhm.
assistant coaches that you could say were leaders in that locker room. Masai was a leader and Bobby was a leader.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
lot of leadership to go around. However, there must be someone who's willing to not stranglehold it.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if the leader that you're talking about in the soccer context, if they enabled players to lead others, or if they kind of were very dictatorial, like I am the man, I am leader, I decide.
No, we had a couple of guys that were very good people who led the team, but the primary guy that we had, he was a midfielder, he was a great player. He decided to leave, go to another institution here in my city, and we lost the next 5 games, and I think that knocked us out of the playoffs. So what I'm saying is when you don't have, I mean, you could have a couple of leaders, but I think you need one guy that can kind of unite all of those leaders and be kind of like just the number one leader, and that's the thing you guys don't have. I feel like Scottie Barnes can be a good leader. Um,
He has some growing up to do for
Yeah.
sure. I think leaders ideally shouldn't be emotionally reactive, and I've found him to be pretty emotionally reactive. But I do agree that he has the sentiment to be the leader. I think it's
Mhm.
very difficult if you're a multi billion-dollar franchise to turn the keys of your entire franchise over to a 21-year-old,
Mhm.
especially if maturity has been internally discussed as an issue. You would probably look at someone like Fred VanVleet, and it's so ironic to say it, but Steady
Mhm.
Freddie is predictable,
Mhm.
very predictable. You know exactly what he's going to say. And apart from maybe the last month of hiccups over contract leaks and, team meeting leaks and all the bullshit that's been happening, apart from that, he's had a 6.5 year run of just being, pretty much a model citizen, never really getting too disrupted, never really creating waves and controversies. I mean, you could argue that there is a reason why this coaching staff trusts him so much with that leadership tag. I just
Mhm.
think that there is something missing, of course, which is that collaborative buy-in. Because at the end of the day, uh, man, I can't believe I'm going to reference a '90s movie, Varsity Blues. Has anyone seen it? Varsity Blues?
I haven't.
No. Anyone in the chat seen Varsity Blues? Someone said, "Bro, there's a lot of all stars who are emotional." I agree, but the really, really good ones who won multiple championships learned how to control their emotions. Um, Da, 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 da. Tetra. Okay, so yes, good movie. I mean, it's not really a good movie, but there's Coach Bud in that. And he's played by Angelina Jolie's dad, John Boyd, and he's consistently asking players to play hurt and inject steroids and whatever. And I don't want to completely ruin the film for anyone who hasn't watched it. Spoiler alert. Um, but effectively, his team eventually, they see him as a champion. They see him as like his district titles. He's won all these championships, and everyone buys into him until something happens that challenges his character as a person. And once you bring in Mox, who's played by the guy who played James Vanderbeek, he challenges this guy openly, and suddenly everything falls apart. It's like a house of cards, right? His
Mhm.
leadership was built on lies, and Mox challenges it because he's kind of an out of box thinker. And so, look, if you had drafted Jalen Suggs over Scottie Barnes, maybe Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga over Scottie Barnes. If you draft a guy who maybe isn't as expressive or as alpha a personality, maybe this thing just never happens. Maybe you don't end up with as good a player, but maybe you never really end up with a rookie sort of openly challenging, your leader, because
Mhm.
he's done it plenty of times visibly on the court. He's tuned him out, and that does undercut somewhat your authority, in my opinion. There might be other guys on this team who are very free thinkers, like
Mhm.
OG Anunoby, very free thinker, but he can be brought into line. So I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but I do think
Yeah.
you're right that
But
leadership is an issue. I've always had an issue with the leadership
mhm.
of this group. I thought Thad and Otto could be the leaders on this
Yeah.
team. Unfortunately, one of them's not playing. One of them's out for the season. I think that
Mhm.
destabilizes. And once you have once you establish as a team three leaders, three or four leaders, and one of them leaves, all of that leadership concentration goes into the three who are remaining, two who are remaining, and if none are remaining or one reluctantly gives it up, then you just have one leader. I think this
But
this locker room feels very divided, and while the chemistry on offense for the Raptors tonight was great, not great. The first half there were moments. This is definitely a far cry from shooting 37, 38% from the
yeah.
field, right? That they were shooting before. If I look at the last four games stretch of just positive-ish offense, but the defense has just been so bad.
Yeah.
Like, this is a team that started out as a top 10, top 12 defense. Even when Siakam was out, they maintained some sort of defensive identity. OG Anunoby was consistently being mentioned as a top 3 defensive player of the year candidate. He's not being mentioned as that anymore. This defense has fallen off a cliff.
But
Um,
I have a question though, because in my personal opinion, I feel like Fred VanVleet should be traded. I don't care if he scores 150 points the next game. I still think he should be traded. I know that you think he should be traded as well, but do you think it's kind of difficult for the other 50%, maybe 60% of the fan base that really likes him because maybe he was undrafted and all that? Like, do you think it's going to be difficult for them to move on from Fred VanVleet?
I think that even his most diehard supporters would have to agree that the last 12 months have been somewhat of a train wreck, right? Just like Scottie's most diehard supporters would have to admit that his first 2 3 months did not go as planned. I think that's just being real with reality. I think there's also a very strong precedent to understanding that just because you love a guy or you're loyal to a guy, it doesn't mean that you need to sign him for 4 plus years, or that the guy who he is today is the guy who's going to be 3 4 years from now. I think where we started about a year and a half ago was 90% of the fan base thought he was like a top 10, 12 point guard who was going to eventually ascend into Kyle Lowry's role. I think the losing this year has really amplified it because I mean there were a lot of chatter last year. I was definitely, I think, vocal and very much leading it. Um in my, lack of, like, I don't have much of a following here, right? But I was very passionate about my take that I don't think that
Mhm.
Fred VanVleet is the guy. Like, I don't think he's necessarily worth the load that he carries on offense. I don't think he's as good as the guy who he talks himself up to be. And then slowly, as the losses start to pile up, now the fan base becomes a little bit more split over, like, okay, is it Pascal? Is it OG?
Mhm.
Is it Fred? Is it Scottie? And everyone's kind of got their guy that they like to pile on, right? Like tonight, if you're a pro Fred guy, you're like, okay, well, 39 points for Fred. Scottie and OG fucked up, right? And if you're a pro Scottie guy, you're like, man, like Scottie did every freaking thing for this
Mhm.
team in order to fit into an offense that didn't make a lot of sense. And he led two very positive stretches for this team where guys got going and guys got easy touches with him, and the lead built. You got to understand, when Fred VanVleet checked into the game, they were down one. They lost the game by 8. It's not an accident.
Mhm.
Drew Holiday was already on the court. Like,
Mhm.
Brook Lopez was on the court. Brook Lopez gets ejected, and, and,
But
and you
by the way, don't mean to cut you off, but thank you, thank the Raptors for getting Brook Lopez suspended because we play the Bucks in a few days and he always
I
destroys
don't
us.
think he's suspended. I think
Oh
he's just
really?
ejected. You
Oh
don't get
god
you don't get
damn.
suspended for being
Oh
ejected unless they find something else. But
man.
I don't think you should be rooting for wins right now, Detroit fan. I don't think you should. Anyway, man, thanks a lot for chiming in. I
Yeah.
really appreciate
All
it.
right, man. Thank you. Have a
Cheers.
great night.
Yeah, you too. Um, I think we have time for one final caller. Samuel, what's up?
Hey, not much. I'm glad we're on the losing track, and I think your last point to the last caller was right. I think we're on the same track. I think there's nothing wrong with losing at this point. We're not going anywhere. I saw, again, I don't want to promote the other YouTuber, but I think you mentioned it. I went to see his channel, and I was talking about all the trades and signings since 2019. I think that was good. I think it's good. I don't think we have enough talents.
Are you talking about Raptors Republic?
Yeah, I don't know if you mind me saying it. That's why.
Oh,
Yeah,
no problem, man. Promote Raptors Republic all you
yeah.
want. No problem.
Samson, like that's quality content,
Yeah,
which
man.
I don't want to pile on the local media, but I was expecting the local media to produce somebody like yourself and him and others. But anyways, I'm looking through the salary, which I think you looked at with another caller a couple calls ago,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, man, we can't pay Fred 22. Like if 22 mil.
He doesn't want 22. He wants
He wants
30
30, right?
plus.
Yeah, 30 plus. We can't pay him that, even if he's good. I mean, what's and you mentioned many times, what's a guy like? Was he 5'10" or 6?
He's 6.
Yeah, I mean, even if he takes great shots, he's on the downside trend. No offense.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna. He's not like. I mean, Steve Nash is an anomaly, right? He's
Yeah.
probably gonna be more Isaiah Thomas. I'm talking the younger Isaiah, not the Detroit Piston Isaiah Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's going to be more Isaiah Thomas like. So all these guys who's going to say, like you said, tomorrow morning it's going to be, well, Fred did everything else and nobody did. Like, those guys can really kiss it because, and I don't mind. I don't mean to demean some of the guys here in terms of fanship, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've been, I guess, following the Raptors since Vince Carter. I think we are very small minded. We don't like winning. We always want to celebrate the small win, and we're always afraid to lose players. I understand we're not in the market. We're not Miami, New York, or LA. I understand that. But that's more the reason why we got to take a chance to do things. And if everybody wants to, like, well, keep DeMar and look at what we're doing, and we traded his buddies away, well, we took a gamble. It worked. We won a championship. Like, I hope we learn from that and
Mm-hmm.
said, "Look, we got to make the necessary moves for the future because this season is a wash." I'm glad this season happened because it exposed a lot of people. You said it best, and I think you're reaching that point. And correct me if I don't want to paraphrase you. I think where you're going when you have a when you have a player like Scottie Barn, who's probably a genius at his level in terms of passing and seeing the court and making plays. It's
Mm-hmm.
evident. He's bound to challenge somebody like a Fred VanVleet who doesn't see the court as the same way as he does, who didn't come up the system the way he did. He had to work for everything, and he's more like me first because I could be undraft like I could be on in G League tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and I gotta make every basket count because it's me auditioning again, again, and again. Here's where I differ from your opinion. I even think if he got his contract option, I think it was an option exercise, I think he'll play the same way. That's just in his DNA. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think he'll change. And he's not Allen Iverson. I'm sorry. Allen Iverson, you remember, I think you played basketball and follow basketball then. I mean, he had all these support players around him. We don't. We have too many guys who need the ball in their hands. And no offense, they're not
You know, Allen
superstar.
Iverson, despite his shooting percentages, was a very talented playmaker.
Absolutely.
And, and the load that he carried on offense, like you can look at his analytics, they back it up. Like he was a superstar, a flawed superstar, yes. A flawed defender, yes. A maybe too ball dominant, maybe in the wrong situation, but man, like he made it to the finals as a first option, with his second option being who?
Absolutely.
Eric
Eric
Snow,
Snow,
Dikembe
yeah.
Mutombo,
Jeez.
Jumaine Jones. Like this is Tyrone Hill. Like I mean, do you remember that
I
roster?
remember that lost roster. I
I
mean,
mean, and they beat the Bucks with
and,
the three-headed monster of
yeah,
Sam Cassell, Ray
yeah.
Allen, Glenn Robinson. They beat the Raptors. In a year they were really good with Vince Carter, Antonio Davis. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, and they got a win on a team that had not lost to anyone up until that point, which is the Lakers. So, I think, yeah. I mean, you said a lot. It's.
Rob, you said it many pod ago, right? Like I think that's where I follow you. Like the whole thing, like I think you're first, I wouldn't say the first, but one of the many who now are coming out to say like we don't have a superstar since Vince Carter and Kawhi Leonard. I hate to say like I got a lot of there's a lot of media member and pundits and YouTubers or whatever you want to call them that keep saying we can win with this experiment. I don't think so. This is a great proof of it, and I think it was one of I think with you or Raptors Republic. Like if you're doing this experiment, I think Orlando has more talent than we do. So if we don't have talents and we have a lot of
Hmm.
guys who are going 28, maybe well the two main
Who
ones.
on Orlando is more talented than Pascal
No,
Siakam?
overall, we have more like
I
they have
mean, they
more
have a
length.
great, tremendous depth of talent, right? Bol is talented. Jalen Suggs, albeit hasn't worked out so far, is talented.
Chet
Franz is
Holmgren, oh
talented.
not Chet Holmgren,
Paolo
Carroll.
Paolo is talented, but I don't think they have a single guy who realistically could project to be as good as Scotty or and I know some people are going to
Oh
say
no, I'm not.
Paolo. I don't think so.
I'm not saying
Um,
Scotty. I'm saying outside of Scotty. Maybe we're
outside of
talking.
Scotty and Pascal and OG, because I tell you, like OG is so much better than what he showed tonight.
And he's
And
25. He's not bad, right? So
right, and I mean they have guys who are 24, 25. I mean, look, if they had such an overwhelming dearth of talent, like, I'm not saying that they're in a bad situation. I think it would be very difficult for me to say, oh well, Paolo is definitely going to be better than Pascal
but
Siakam,
they're
because
like
Paolo is never going to be the
when
defender
we
that
when we
Siakam is.
played them, like we need length and athleticism to. It seems our system is built on to overwhelm the other stars, and
I mean, they've been in the lottery for like what feels
oh, I
like 12
understand.
years, right? I mean,
Absolutely,
like you're
absolutely.
and they have a very competent general manager. And like when losing that much, like look, consider this. Like I think people need to get this in perspective. The Raptors lost four-fifths, I believe, of their starting lineup in the championship year, right? I
Yeah,
mean
but
they
I
lost
mean,
all of it except for
going back to
Siakam.
again, maybe you didn't agree with Raptors Republic content. Go back like that video, and I was looking back, like we actually let some guys go. It was like we're not a saint here. Like there's certain things that we may have done
When you say let guys go, there has to be
for
some sort
nothing.
of precedent. Like this
Yeah,
is this is a There has to be some sort of like, okay, so let's say for instance, Danny Green, right? Danny Green walked for nothing. Serge Ibaka walked for nothing. Marc Gasol walked for nothing. Kawhi walked for nothing.
Yep.
What do you propose that the Raptors, even with the benefit of hindsight, what do you propose they do? Do you propose that the Raptors trade Kawhi Leonard at the deadline and then don't win a championship? No,
No,
you
no,
took a
no.
1 year gamble. He didn't stay. You can't do anything about it. You can't force the Clippers to create
Hold on. No, no, no. We're not. I'm not going there. I'm thinking. Let's not
Okay,
repeat
so
it
no,
because
no, 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 because I think that people have been like, look, I'm not trying to sit here and defend management, but I think Masai and Bobby are a hell of a lot more competent than people have been giving them credit for, and I would just like to express that Danny Green walked as a free agent,
yeah,
and
sure.
we do not know, we do not have the benefit of understanding if there was a trade for him at the deadline. Number one, number two, what message are you sending to your team that is trying to compete? By the way, the Raptors, the year after Kawhi left, win-loss record was better. They were on pace for a higher win-loss record prior to the season shutting down than they were with Kawhi. How do you tell a team like that, oh, by the way, we're going to trade Serge, Danny, and Mark because they're free agents and we don't know if they're going to sign. But once they become free agents, well, then I'm sorry, but they're unrestricted free agents. All three of them became unrestricted free agents, I believe, in the same offseason. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And they all had the chance to walk for nothing. And frankly, trading any one of those guys, I mean, they lowballed Serge, fine. They maybe didn't want Mark back or they didn't want to pay him an aggressive thing. They've been right on all three of those. I'm sorry. Apart from Danny Green, like all, and he's been mildly positive. You had an aging core. It happens, right? The Detroit Pistons had an aging core when they won the championship, right? I mean, it wasn't quite as aging, but it was like an aging core. Marc Gasol was definitely on
But
his last like borderline
so
all-star-ish
so
impact season.
we're going through this period where we don't have a superstar caliber person. At least Scottie hasn't reached that goal yet. Like it may take him another year or two.
Some people would probably argue, the box score watchers would argue that Siakam is that level of player.
You and I know that's, and probably he knows himself. He's not. He's at maybe second star on a championship team. I'm sorry,
Probably.
probably right. When you don't have that, and you might need to, like you said, maintain the fan base and things of that nature. But we are at a situation where we got three guys going into next year who are probably two of them are not going to resign, or
Mm-hmm.
Fred and Gary. So, and you got Pascal making 37 million a year, 38, 37.8, I think. And I don't think he has a player option in his next year. Just trade three of them. Like you got to see what value. Maybe they're doing that right now. I don't know, because if whatever you guys are all saying, if the locker room is not cohesive,
Mm-hmm.
if we have two aging star, and I would call them aging 28, right? That maybe is on their, on the downside of their peak. What are we
Okay.
doing here? That's my question, and it's not trying to be negative or whatever, but I just don't know where we're going as a team here, unless they trade these guys and get some sort of value in return, or else they're going to lose them for nothing.
Fair enough, man. Thanks
I'll
for
let you
calling
go.
in as
No, I appreciate it.
always. I really appreciate it, man. Take care.
Thanks.
A lot
Take
to
care.
think about
Bye.
there. Where do we go from here? We're gonna try to pull up the Fred VanVleet post game. I know that. By the way, guys, I know that I had asked the community what you guys want more of. I'm gonna keep this under 2 hours. Don't worry, but I haven't really followed through with the format. I think tonight was just one of those strange games where there's so much to discuss and so much to dissect, and it's such an opportunity when someone goes off for such a overwhelmingly positive individual performance to actually discuss the concept of team. So here comes Fred VanVleet. And I promise not to be unfair or rude.
Yeah, I
Oof,
mean,
the audio.
felt like they would slow down at some point, but they never did. Had to look at the tape, but it just felt like, a lot of threes and kind of back-breaking plays, and, they just kept momentum pretty much the whole second half. And they put it to us in the third a little bit there, got some separation, and then, it was coin toss in the fourth, and they made a couple more plays late.
What do you think your team's offense is now compared to where it was maybe 2 years?
Yeah, I think it looks better, it feels better. Yeah, I think it looks better, I think it feels better. Again, we're scoring enough most of these games. But I think it's going to be hard to win, giving up 130. I know that's the way the league is going now. So, we got to find ways to get stops. I thought we were, fighting the whistle a lot tonight and just never really got on the other side of it where we felt like we could dictate enough. And we spotted them too much in the beginning of the game, and they just kept, their aggression and their momentum and their rhythm. But I thought we fought hard. Just, again, it's a pretty good team over there, even without their best guys. So just not good enough tonight to get it done. But I thought that we competed.
But when yesterday against Galen and today against Drew, do you feel the kind of responsibility that you got to kind of attack that matchup and make sure that these guys are going to go off for a big number? You got to at least be there to stuff.
I think it's just a competitive nature and drive. You always get up for the big matchups. So that's probably all it was. Just trying to be aggressive and, help this team win as I start to find my groove a little bit. But just, we didn't come out with the win tonight. Unfortunately, Drew had a big game. We put some size on him early just to take away some of the screening role and the switching and the slipping. I thought was good, but he was able to score a little bit. So we just didn't make it crowded enough on him, and he kind of had his way tonight. So, he's one of the best in the league at the guard position, and Jalen's having a great year as well. So you always try to get up for those games.
Does anything feel different in the past couple of games offensively for you, just strictly offensively?
Me personally? No, I think just being more aggressive. Obviously, the shots are going in, so that helps. It's pretty simple, but just not overthinking it. Just got to be myself and not, kind of try to find the magic potion for this team or the magic pill. I think, for the best option is just for me to be myself and let everything fall into place. So obviously the last two games have been super aggressive and it feels a little bit better that way. It is what it is. Yeah. No injuries, but it's two really physical games and physical teams. So neither one of those games helped the back much at all. But just try to be able to be available for the team, go out there and compete, and got to rest and recover. We got another tough team on Thursday. Thanks, guys.
Oh my God. For a company that deals in Wi-Fi and phones and connectivity, Rogers, Bell, unbelievable. These pressers are... I don't know what to make of that, guys. I mean, if someone wants to tell me what they think of that, you can call in. I don't really have any more to say about it. As I said, early in the first half, I tweeted, I swear to God, it's true. I did not expect to have this feeling about Fred VanVleet. The first half, I was like, he's having a good game. I think in the first quarter, I said, he's taking shots within rhythm. It's kind of working. The defense has been shit, but on offense, he's been really good. And something happened in the second half. It just did not work. Whatever was working before did not work. Anyways, Nope, that's not it. The link is in the bio if anyone wants to have one final call. I don't really have much more else to say other than to tease out that we did a very, very cool, I think, very cool film breakdown of Scottie earlier, about 5:30. One of the things that you guys asked as a community was that you wanted more Leo. You also asked for less Scottie. So I gave you one, I took one. One for me, one for you. So we did a Scottie Barnes film breakdown together. And it was really interesting. I think some of the stuff that we covered in that, it talks about the analytics, talks about where on the floor he's doing certain things from. It breaks down, slowly breaks down the passes. So definitely if you're wanting to have more hoop talk and less psychological profiling talk, definitely go check that out afterwards. I apologize if this has gone a little bit off the rails here, but we flashed numbers, we're looking at player cards and all sorts of stuff in that. I did want to revisit a couple of things that I said this off season, just to kind of for shits and giggles, right? And these are some of the videos, right? So how do I feel about these videos? Obviously some of them are basically, some of these videos are simply just mixes, so I won't react to those. But the Toronto Raptors backcourt is a problem. in which I talk about the paint finishing and defensive upside of a backcourt of Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet. Do I still think that I would back up everything that I said in that video? No, I think I feel more strongly about the Fred VanVleet stuff. I feel less strongly about the Gary Trent stuff. I think he's been so much better, and I think he's someone that fits in really well. Scottie Barnes doesn't owe the Raptors anything. Yeah, I still stick by that. Otto Porter can change the title hopes. Yes, I still stick by that. I think in the 8 games he played, unfortunately he got injured, but I think he was incredible. The Toronto Raptors are ready to shock the NBA in 2022, 2023. Man, if you don't watch that video and just read the title, just assume that I meant in a negative way. I ranked every Toronto Raptor from worst to best. I don't think I disagree with much of that at all. And in that, I actually cited that I would prefer Utah over Juancho. I had Juancho rated as the 13th player. So my rankings, so the 20th, 19th, and 18th guys all got cut. I had Cam very close to the bottom. I had Precious Achiuwa top 6. And yeah, like I had Chris Boucher down by 9 or 10. So I think that was very prophetic, and I think I stick by that. Precious Achiuwa needs to step up for the Raptors this year. Previously called Precious Achiuwa as the X Factor. Completely agree with that one. I think he changes so much for the second unit, gives the Raptors another guy who's like basically like a 6th starter. If he was shooting as well as he's shooting tonight, and if he was available for all these games, I don't think you're even below 500. I think he has such an impact. Scottie Barnes struggles in preseason. I talked about it being sort of temporary, that he'd eventually get out of it. Pascal Siakam is Pascal Siakam a superstar? I was very firm that he was not. That was not the first time I would make that. OG Anunoby is ready to blow up. I agree with that. In it, I said that he still had some level of all-star potential in him, and I think prior to, the last 3 to 4, prior to the last 3 weeks, I think he was steadily climbing up to that level, and I think that he's flashed it. The Toronto Raptors have a superstar. Probably a little premature on that one. The 5 most underrated teams in the NBA. Holy shit, I had the Detroit Pistons there, so I was wrong, but some of them are right. It's too early to panic about the Toronto Raptors. Slow start. I disagree. It was probably early enough to panic. The Raptors, Scottie's this Marvel superhero. I agree with that, but I think I wish I would have thought about that video a little bit better. Christian Koloko is too smart to be a rookie. Talk about his defensive potential and switchability. I really like that. And you can't win a championship with Siakam as your first option. Honestly, the most hated video in this channel is history, where I literally wax poetic for 45 minutes about why Pascal Siakam will never be a top 5 player. I think that video single-handedly resulted in the loss of, I want to say, 40 subscribers. It was bad. I received so many negative emails about it, but I don't care because I stick by it. I don't think Pascal Siakam can be a number 1 on a championship team, but he's had a way better season so far than I would have projected him to have in a larger role. But lately it's been a little bit more down to earth, but I empathize that things are not stable in the locker room. He seems to be really heavily weighted by it. He's playing extreme minutes. So I always look at, like, when I see Pascal Siakam game tape on defense and I'm like, he's not really dialed in defensively for all the possessions. I'm like, it's really hard to do everything that he does on offense and still be a competent defender. In terms of like the best version of Raptors basketball, I think we saw it last game. There was versions of it last game. There were flashes of it in Charlotte. Yeah, but tonight it just felt like a very different team, very different game. Con Kim is saying Precious is so good. Okay, we have met the founder of the Precious Achiuwa, fan club. I like it. Oh, by the way, the ranking of the players, if there's one player that I would definitely move way up, I had Jeff Doughton like 16th or something. I would move him all the way up to like 12th or 11th now if I could do it all over again. Precious Achiuwa is brain dead on D tonight. I'll have to see the tape. I was more very impressed by his offensive intelligence and IQ, like where he was getting shots, how he was spacing out. There were a couple of times where he kind of got out of the paint so he can get out of the way for his team, and I thought that was really cool because typically, like, he doesn't think 2 moves ahead. Like, he's kind of just reacting to everything as it's coming to him, and tonight There seemed to be a little bit more methodical thought, but I'm sure that if I look at the tape, it'll probably reveal something different. Um, Pascal is a perfect number 2, and I'm his biggest fan. I don't know why anyone would have thought he can win a ring as a 1. I think again, it's box score obsession, right? Without context, without understanding usage, role efficiency, without understanding inflation, without understanding offensive ratings. If I told you, like, just think about it. Let's say I'm describing a player, but you don't know which player I'm describing, and I tell you that that player is averaging 38 and 7, right? Like, without any context of efficiency, without any context of how good the team is with him on the court versus off the court, box plus minus, without any context of how good his teammates are, right? Like, I'm pretty sure if the Bucks wanted to tonight, they could have gotten Grayson Allen 30 points very easily. If Grayson Allen had compromising pictures of, Coach Bud or something, and he's like, Coach Bud, I need a 30-point game tonight. Yeah, the offense can be structured around a half competent shooter. Look at a guy like JJ Redick. I think JJ Redick is it's so interesting that Fred VanVleet and JJ Redick, seem to get along so well, because I think they have a lot in common, with the exception that JJ Redick was like the role player version of it on offense. You don't think that, like, a team could have gotten JJ Redick 35 points whenever the hell they wanted? The guy could shoot from anywhere. He was such a good shooter. His mechanics were so incredible. Why did JJ Redick never average 25 points per game? There's a reason there, because there's an upper limit to how well an offense can run when you have high usage JJ Redick as your primary option. He's not creative enough. He's not bursty enough. He's not competent enough a paint finisher. He was a role player. He bought into that. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to Kyle Korver. Congratulations to, a lot of guys. One guy that I always liked growing up was Mohamed Abdul-Rauf. I don't know if there's any old timers. I'm sure that there's some people out here who rate Mohamed Abdul-Rauf as like the original Steph Curry prior to when Steph Curry was allowed to be Steph Curry. Anyone in the chat want to let me know, like, Mohamed Abdul-Rauf, do you rate that guy? Like, I thought he was incredible. And yeah, like, it's so crazy to me, but like, that guy could have gone off. Like, he was so much better than Fred. I just want to throw it out there as a scorer, as a shooter, as a everything. I think like his game was so, the league wasn't ready for that type of player back then. I think Fred is kind of coming into his own as a first option hybrid type wannabe right when the pace, everything is kind of exploding, right? So in his post game, he talks about, we're scoring okay, the shots are going in. He doesn't see past that. And I find that so surprising, almost like he's playing dumb, because he definitely should see past that. He should see that his teammates struggle when they play this way. Mike, I'm better than Fred, no cap. I call cap. There's no way in hell you're better than Fred, and I don't know about you. Unless, of course, Mike, Mike, is that the burner from Michael Jordan? Because if it is, then probably, yes, you are. Even at 53, 54, you probably body Fred VanVleet. I've heard of him, but I didn't follow his career. Definitely check out some old tape, man. I think, there are very few players of this ilk that can be primary options and not kill your offense. I think Drazen Petrovic is probably the highest level version of like a gunner. Reggie Miller, like a gunner, but these guys weren't like initiating like 35, pick and rolls every single game. They weren't like hunting for their shot that way. They did get easy ones. I don't think Fred gets as many easy ones. I thought he got some easy ones tonight in the flow of the game in the first half. Pascal Siakam definitely doesn't get easy ones. So I think that there's sort of an effort to try to fit a square peg into a round hole, and I just think that there's like an upper limit to that. Someone brought up today that Pascal Siakam is a very proven first option in the playoffs. He is not. Absolutely not. The Raptors have never won a playoff series with Pascal Siakam as their best player, performing as their best player. Like, they did beat Orlando in the bubble, if I'm not mistaken. It was Orlando, but he was not anywhere near the best player, and they didn't beat Boston, and he wasn't their best player. And last year, they didn't beat Philadelphia, and he was 23% from three in that series. I believe there was an entire half where he didn't score. He averaged 22 or 23 points per game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Like, it was like, if you compare Chris Middleton championship year to Pascal Siakam last year, when things were rolling for him, right? I think you would find those two players very comparable. And Chris Middleton is solidly a second option if you want to go down that line in terms of where he is in terms of best players on the Bucks. He is like, maybe when he comes back, he's a third option behind Drew Holiday. So you're taking your first option, second option, and other teams have third options and fourth options better than them. You're not going to win, right? Jaylen Brown, people compare Pascal Siakam, Jaylen Brown all the freaking time, all the time. And while I think Pascal Siakam could make a very good case for being better, I think, Celtics fans would probably very loudly disagree with that. Clutch Tatum, you're here. Let me know. Would you give us Jaylen Brown if we offered you Pascal Siakam? I don't think you would. So anyway, I think this is a win for the tank. This was on national television. Fred VanVleet played really well. Scottie Barnes had another performance that's going to cement a lot of those he's Draymond people out there. I think it was competent. I think he really hustled hard on defense. I'm not surprised that someone like Kevin Garnett, who has a great appreciation, you can add Kevin Garnett to the heap of former Hall of Famers and legends who have come to sort of bat for Scottie Barnes amidst all the noise the past 2 seasons about him not being a good player, about him being, a limited offensive player. That includes Jason Kidd, Magic Johnson, Kevin Durant, Kyle Lowry, Vince Carter. It just goes on and on, right? LeBron James, like anyone who's anyone, Jason Tatum, John Morant, and now Kevin Garnett. Greatness understands greatness. When you really understand the game of basketball at a very deep level, and you watch this team play, there are certain players that just stick out to you, that they're not doing the right thing constantly. And if you're just casually observing the game, maybe you won't see it. You won't see how certain guys are hijacking the offense. But I assure you that if you look at some of the attempts tonight for Fred VanVleet, just do me a favor. Go back and go to NBA.com. Look at all shot attempts for Fred VanVleet. It's very simple, right? And just look at where his teammates were relative to him. Look at some of the shots that OG Anunoby had tonight, and tell me like which one of those shots were really good shots. I think he had that one where he passed the 3 and then he wound up with a mid-range sort of half fading open shot. That was a great shot, but a lot of shots were really contested. Offenses are designed to create easy opportunities for certain players. If an offense is gearing towards creating all of those opportunities for one of those players, not only will the percentages look better for the player for whom everything is being created for, but also the volume of attempts will be better for that player. I think Scottie Barnes screening, OG Anunoby screening guys out of the way for Fred VanVleet is helping Fred VanVleet. Is Fred VanVleet doing the same for his teammates? I think that's worth asking. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe. Please hit like. If you need more hoop talk in your life, definitely be sure to check out some of our past videos. If you haven't checked out the Scottie Barnes trainer episode, where we talked with Brian Macon about what's going on with Scottie Barnes, definitely check that one out. It was a hell of a conversation, and we're still trying to get that video up to 10,000 views. And if you are deeply curious about what I think about basketball, which, I mean, I'm positive there's at least 50 people here who just hate watching, who just want to go dislike that video, but it's fine. Whether you're hate watching, love watching, whatever it is. Leo and I broke down the film of Scottie Barnes, and we looked at the last 3 games, specifically New Orleans, Atlanta, New York. And we just looked at like what is going on with Scottie and how he's creating advantages for his teammates. We looked at some of the assists, we looked at some of the scoring, and I think you'll find that we were very fair. Like, we were very critical of some of the misses, some of the bad decisions. It wasn't just 2 guys fanning over Scottie the whole time. We were pretty objective and pretty fair about it. We did some comparables, so hopefully you check that out. Alrighty. Okay, Mark F, you blocked. Put user. No, do I block you or do I put you in a timeout? Like I told you before, like, guys, it's not cool to spam the chat. Like, you're getting blocked. Peace out, Mark. I don't care if you think Fred VanVleet had the best game of his life tonight. I don't. I really don't. Okay? It's perfectly reasonable and legit. Captain Sava Bro, yes, it was. LOL. Yes, it was what? You think it was just two people fanning over Scottie the whole time? You know, man, like sometimes people hear what they want to hear, right? If you walk into this chat with this guy hates Fred, which is the narrative that a lot of people have kind of gotten. I just want to get this off my chest before I don't hate Fred. I literally like looked up every post that mentions Fred VanVleet that I've ever made, from videos to posts on Facebook. I'm sorry, there's like 7 overwhelmingly positive, no shade, no passive aggressive language. He's grown on me. He's playing differently. I really like this. Like sometimes it's like, you go in with a little information and you assume that I would never say anything negative about Scottie. I think I said like 10 negative things about him tonight. So it's like it does make me a little bit cagey that I have to like sort of defend my position on this, because obviously I don't want to be accused of being the next Doug Smith and doing for Scottie what Doug Smith and Josh Lewenberg do for Fred VanVleet. I'm sorry, I don't. And if you check this channel's track record, I think you can probably agree that I've been pretty right. For the most part, been pretty right throughout this, with a couple of exceptions. I've definitely been pretty right about a lot of things so far in regards to Fred VanVleet, Scottie, etc. And I'm sorry, it's just we all have a different way of seeing the game. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong because you think Fred VanVleet putting up, within context of, if you have that mentality of scoring dog alpha, I'm sure that there are certain YouTubers out there that are really, really being like, oh my God, Fred VanVleet's averaging, 36 points per game over the last 2 games. He's an all-star again. Great. Like absolutely. I think it matters. I had nothing bad to say about him last game, and people still accuse me of hating on him. They're like, "Oh my God, it looks like you have a lot of pain on your face." Alex C, the next Doug Smith. I don't want to be the next Doug Smith. I'll quit before that happens. Anyways, guys, we're at the 2-hour mark. Have a good one, and I'm probably gonna clip the end of this because I just feel like I rambled for 10 minutes about why I don't hate Fred VanVleet. I don't hate him. I don't like the hero ball shit. It doesn't work. I promise you. Go watch some good teams play. Go watch Boston play and tell me who plays like that. Tell me if Jason Tatum plays like that. Go watch Memphis. I still have like 30 seconds to go. Go watch Memphis and tell me if Ja Morant plays like that. Go watch any good team that's even reasonably good. Go watch Nikola Jokic. You think Nikola Jokic, a 2-time MVP, couldn't take every fucking shot he wanted? Of course he could. He doesn't play like that. Winning players don't play like that. Not anymore. Only guys who played in like the early 2000s when the offensive rating was like average league offensive rating was like 102. That's when you played like that. We don't play like that anymore because we realize that other teams are way more efficient offensively. And if you insist on playing like that, it's going to be good for your stats. It's going to be bad for your team. So I take a really major issue with Fred VanVleet saying it's all about the team and then playing this way, because you play this way, to me, you're not about team. Anyway, cheers guys, and have a good one.